Okay, in this next section, we're going to work on a part called the Jumbotron. So the Jumbotron is this piece right here. You notice there's a big background image that stays put. You'll notice some text. You'll notice some buttons that could be links to the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. So that's what we're going to create in this section. So where we left off in the code, I would actually, before we work on the next section, I like every new section, I like to have a little comment. And a comment in HTML looks like this. And so what you can see here is you've got a left angle bracket followed by an exclamation point and then two hyphens. And then the word navbar. Navbar is just this section of code followed by two hyphens and a right angle bracket. And so this comment is not going to show up on the web page. It just shows up in your code as a way to show you to the different sections. And so I'll copy this navbar comment once I have it typed. Go ahead and copy it. And go to the end of the nav, scroll down, see where the nav is closing. And let's go ahead and put in another comment, but this one's going to be called Jumbotron. And obviously that's where our next section of code is going to go. Okay, so now beneath the comment for your Jumbotron is going to be the section where we put the code. So this is line 51 for me.
Everybody watch, please.
If you create an empty space there, back on getbootstrap.com, if I go to the home page, right, we remember that we find under the documentation a Jumbotron, just like a navbar, is found under components. So here we clicked on navbar last time. This time I'm going to click on Jumbotron. Okay. Now here on Jumbotron you can see there's only two options.
Back to getbootstrap.com.
Now from these two options, we're going to choose the one that's a fluid Jumbotron. You can see this is a modified Jumbotron that occupies the entire horizontal space of its parent. So I'm going to come down here and choose copy on the fluid Jumbotron. And paste it underneath.
Not a bad idea if you have it saved for a while to do a file save, control F.
Okay, so we are going to be making changes to this, but just to take a look at what it currently looks like. This is a fluid Jumbotron. You can see it goes the full width. Okay, one thing we're going to do is give this Jumbotron an ID. So underneath the Jumbotron, you see there's a div with a class on it. Notice that this class is Jumbotron and Jumbotron Fluid inside of quotes. Well, after that set of quotes, notice where my cursor is. It's after that closing quote. Okay, I'm going to give it an ID of section hyphen top. And if you remember, section top was already used before up here. So we click to the top. That's going to take us up to our Jumbotron because we give our Jumbotron an ID of section top. Now I'm going to give some extra classes to my Jumbotron. I'm pretty sure you could assume what text white does. However, deflex is new. That tells it to use something called flexbox that we'll learn about. We're going to say justify content center and an align content center. There's actually quite a bit on that line, so I'm going to zoom out for just a second so everyone can see it all on one line. So we typed quite a bit there in our Jumbotron. We talked about what each piece does. Justify content center, align content center, that's going to be your horizontal and your vertical alignment of your content. Deflex says use flex box for positioning. Text white says white text. So if I open this up, it's making some changes. We're going to fix that. This is just part of the process. I just realized a typo, so if you guys were typing after me, I had justify hyphen content hyphen center, and then I had align content center. It's align items center. So what I would like everyone to do. So let's see, if I view it in server now, it's more in the center. It's still, I think I have a typo again. Okay, it might actually be some CSS that we need to apply yet on the Jumbotron. So for now, I'm going to stick with this. I might come back and fix this later if there's any issues. Okay, for this div, underneath the Jumbotron, it has a class of container, and we're going to also add the class of text hyphen center. This H1 has a class of, let's make it display 1. That's going to change the size to the biggest display. Text danger for red text. Text uppercase to make it all caps. And the H1 is going to say rankin. So those are the changes to make next. Okay, so we're working on the Jumbotron. We're actually back from a new day, teaching this out of a summer camp, and so I changed the background color, changed the theme of Visual Studio so that they can see it a little bit better on the projector. But anyways, we left off with this Jumbotron, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the paragraph of text. So here, if you guys want to follow along, we have this P tag with a class of lead, which we're going to address the class here in a minute. But see all this black text that says this is a modified Jumbotron that occupies the space of its parent? I'm going to delete that. Notice I'm not deleting any of the angle brackets. That's an angle bracket right here. I'm not deleting the P tag itself. I'm just deleting the black text. I'm going to say technical college. Now, again, this is what the web page will say. The web page will say Rankin Technical College. This is for my website. You're building a different website. If you don't want it to say Rankin Technical College on your Jumbotron, change it to be what your website is about. Okay, you don't have to have the same content as I do. But I want mine to say Rankin Technical College. Now notice the class that I have here. I'm going to change this class. I'm going to delete what's there. I'm going to change it to display 4. Again, that has to do with the size of the heading. Makes it 4 is smaller than 1. And display none, display small block. And so what this does is it actually removes the technical college on small devices. And so we'll see how this works here. If I view this in the browser, and I know you guys are typing, I'll come right back to the code. If I view this in the browser, you see the word technical colleges there. But if I shrink it down, you can notice the word technical college goes away. Okay, and so it does that because of that class that we added. So let me go back to the code again. Go ahead and type this section right here. Really just the paragraph is what's changed. Okay, the next thing, if we look at the finished product, again looking at the finished product, you can see a couple of paragraphs underneath. If you want to use these paragraphs, if you want to add these paragraphs, I'll do that. It's up to you. If you have something to say in a paragraph type of form, I'll leave this up to you. You don't have to do these paragraphs, but let's go ahead and type these paragraphs. Now the question is where? Notice there's this div class of container. And inside of that you've got an H1 and a P. Underneath this paragraph, notice I'm going to go to the end of line 55 and hit enter. And this is where I'm going to create that paragraph. I'm going to create a paragraph with a class of lead. And notice there's a closing paragraph tag. And this is where you can type in a sentence or two. So I'm just going to say Rankin is a technical college in St. Louis, Missouri. And again, type what you like. If you want another paragraph, you can add another paragraph underneath it. It's going to look the same way. I think that's their phone number. So now real quick, if we look at this, we do have a couple of paragraphs. Now obviously you're saying, hey, I can't really read this white text. It's because we don't have our background image. Once we put a background image on here, you're going to be able to read this white text a little bit better. And we might even put a text shadow on the white so that you can read it. Actually, that's what the finished product has. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here and let everyone catch up with their typing. Okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to add a couple of buttons that say, you know, download on the Play Store. So if I format the document, clean that up. Notice what I just did there. If I undo that, if I right click and just click on Format Document, notice how it aligns everything nice and pretty. That's Beautify. That's the plugin that we downloaded already. Okay, so underneath this paragraph, this last paragraph that I wrote, so mine's on line 56. Find that line, go to the end of the line, hit enter, and we're going to add a paragraph that's going to be bold. That's what the strong tag does, is it makes it bold. I'm just going to say download now on. So I added that line. I'm going to go to the end of that line and hit enter. And I'm going to make a button. Now this is a decent amount of code that you're going to have to pay attention here. So we're making a link, and that link has a class of button. It's a large button, and button primary is the color of the button. And for right now, it's just going to say App Store. Okay, if I view this real quick, you could see it says download now on App Store. That's where we're at right now. And I'm going to pause the video. Okay, So that first button's working pretty well. We're gonna make a second button. Now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put my cursor at the beginning of this line with the button, if everyone can kind of watch. I'm gonna put my cursor at the beginning of this line. I'm gonna hold the shift key, and then I'm gonna press the end key. Notice how that highlights the whole line. You could do it with the mouse, but I like keyboard shortcuts. So my keyboard, I'm gonna hold shift and press the end key. That highlights the whole line. I'm gonna hit Control C. That's gonna copy. Obviously you could also right click and copy using the mouse. Now notice where the cursor is. It's highlighting the whole row. I'm gonna hit the end key now. Notice how that doesn't highlight the row anymore, but the cursor's at the end. I'm gonna hit enter and paste. And instead of this saying the App Store, now it's just gonna say Google Play. Okay, so now I have two lines that are basically identical. We're gonna have two buttons that are basically identical. The only difference is one says the App Store and one says Google Play. If I view it in the browser, you can see they're right next to each other. So we go back to the code. Okay, so now we have our Jumbotron mostly finished. What we're missing is a background image. Okay, so we're gonna add a background image next to our Jumbotron. The way this is done is not through the HTML. We're gonna add a background image through the cascading style sheet. If you guys remember, we talked about CSS yesterday just briefly. Okay, that's gonna require us to go to the top and right underneath the title tag, this is line 13 for me, I'm gonna add in another tag that's a style tag. Okay, notice I have an opening style tag and a closing style tag. Okay, and in between this style tag, this is where we're gonna write our CSS. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to pick out an image, which involves going to Google. I'm gonna ask that you guys create an images folder. So if you go back to your desktop, so on the desktop you have your website. I want you to go into that website, and right now you have one page, your index page. I'm going to create a new folder called Images. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what goes inside of images. So now that we're going to go to Google, we're going to save an image. We're going to save it inside of that images folder. Okay, so we're going to get started on picking out this image. Go to the old Google machine, and I'm going to search for my website topic, which is Rankin Technical College. And then you click on images. So once you do your search, you've probably done this before, where you click on and get Google Images. Now, it's going to help if we have a large image size. So this is what you need to do to get a large image size. Under Tools, notice if I click on Tools, I get this little extra menu here. So you need to click on Tools, and then under Size, just click Large. That's going to give me photos that are obviously of a certain size, a large size. Now, this is the image that I used before. Notice when I click on it, it brings this image into view. I can right click the image, and this is where a lot of people mess up. If you're not paying attention, you'll probably mess up here. This is where you save image as. Then you need to browse to your folder, images. So now I'm in the images folder. I'm just going to call it background, and notice the type is JPEG, which is a little confusing because when we code it, it's going to be .jpg. Okay, but my file name is background.jpg, and I'm going to click on save. So that's what I want everyone to do at this point. I want everyone to pick out an image, save it into their images folder, give it the name of background. Now if it's not a JPG, that's okay, but that's where I want everyone to get at this point. Okay, once we have that image chosen, here's the code that we have to write. You have to type it exact. If you have a typo, it will not work. So be very precise. Now what we have here is a period followed by the word Jumbotron, and we have these what are called angle brackets. Curly braces. Angle brackets are these guys. These are curly braces. Okay. Inside of these curly braces, I'm going to put it all on the screen, and you guys can follow along. I'll explain it as I go. There's a lot to type here, a lot of room for typos. This line here, line 16, tells it what image it's using for the background image. Background size cover says basically to stretch and cover the whole area. Background position center. Centers the image on the page, so it's not left aligned, it's centered horizontally. Background attachment fixed makes the image stay put as you scroll. That gives it that parallax effect. And this says 100% vertical height for the height. So it's going to use the entire height of the image, even if there's not that much content, which we don't have a whole lot of content. So it's going to force the height of the image in that place. So now if I didn't have a typo, you're going to see this is the effect. We now have our background image. You can kind of see it as it begins to scroll. So let me go back to the code now that we see that it's working. And get everyone caught up. Okay, so when I take another glance at this, if I look at the site, you all would probably agree it's pretty hard to read what's going on right now. Okay, because we've got some, and it almost doesn't matter. I have such an active, colorful background that I could, I got a red font, I got a white font. I could change this to several different colors. It's still going to be relatively hard to read. So one thing you can do in this scenario is you could put a text shadow on the text, and that'll help you read the text a little bit better. And you could put whatever color shadow that you want. Okay, so that could help you read the text a little bit better. Now, for my website, I'm going to try out a black text shadow. Okay, and that's going to work pretty well for what I need. That's where using a text shadow is a good idea. When you've got a busy background image and you want to see the text a little bit more clearly. Okay, so to make a text shadow, notice underneath the Jumbotron I've got this closing curly brace. I'm going to make another selector that's, I'm just going to call it shad for shadow. I suppose I could put the OW, but we're going to make it SHAD. So you can see here, I'm using a color code, which is all zeros preceded by the pound symbol, that I'm choosing black for my text shadow. Okay, now this is just the first step. We just created a class. Now we have to say, where do we want that text shadow in our HTML? Okay, the next part, everybody, is to apply this. This is called a class. And we need to apply this to whatever words we want to shadow on. So what I'll do is I'll scroll down to my Jumbotron. And here's my Jumbotron. And on the word rankin, you'll notice I have these classes. I'm going to add the class of SHAD. I'm going to apply it to Technical College, SHAD. So notice I added the class here to Rankin. I added it to Technical College. And I'm going to add it to my paragraphs, both 1 and 2. So I added it to 4 places, which you can see highlighted. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just to view it in browser and see if it worked. You can see now I've got a little bit of a text shadow, which makes it a little bit easier to read. Again, you can play with that text shadow to make it easier, different colors. You could put it on different things. If you want it on the download now, that's up to you. But that's the Jumbotron, so I'm going to go ahead and save the video. It's 28 minutes here. And then we're going to move on to the next section.